Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
At number 3, Oklahoma State, meaning that the rematch is on. Alabama and LSU Part 2.
The tense moments for Alabama fans finally came to an end Sunday night as the Crimson Tide learned they'll play in the playing the BCS championship game against the LSU Tigers, a rematch to determine the national champion. Nick Saban had this to say after hearing the news.
Well, I'm really excited to have the opportunity. I'm really excited for our players, our coaching staff, all the people who work so hard to sort of play at the standard that we were able to play at the entire year. This is a great opportunity for our team, and we really look forward to the challenge of playing LSU, who's an outstanding team, undefeated. And I really feel like the best two teams are playing in the game, and we're really excited to have the opportunity.
And with that, we say good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV presented by Buffalo Rock. Again tonight, Pepsi Cola, ice cold, right out of the refrigerator, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris. A week ago at this time, it seemed that Alabama pretty much had its spot in the BCS championship game locked up. But on Saturday night, it changed, it seemed, when Oklahoma State didn't just beat Oklahoma for the first time in 8 years, but they blew out their in-state rival. And suddenly, a lot of discussion was going on about Oklahoma State jumping Alabama for the number 2 spot. Now, that did not happen, and Alabama got into the game. Rodney, your thoughts on Oklahoma State and Alabama? Did the BCS get it right?
Oh, absolutely, they got it right. What else am I going to say? No, but they really did. I mean, that's all biased aside. I mean, I give you 2 words. Iowa State. How could you have put Oklahoma State, a team that lost to Iowa State, a team that lost in double digits at least 4 times this year? I mean, Oklahoma State knew what was on the line, Gary, a couple of weeks ago. They could not handle prosperity. If they were a great team, they're a good team, but if they were a great team and they deserved it more than Alabama, they would not have lost to a team like Iowa State. It's just simple as that.
Well, I clearly think they got it right. I've been saying even since that game was played, these were the 2 best teams in the country going in. They were the 2 best teams in the country going out. Oklahoma State, everybody keeps talking about Alabama had its opportunity. Oklahoma State, as you said, had its opportunity. If it goes to Ames, Iowa and wins, then Iowa State loses that game, and Oklahoma State's in the national championship. No questions asked. So they had their opportunity, but once they lost and it came down to a battle of one-loss teams, to me, it was clear. Here's the problem I've got, Rodney, is the voting, the way voting goes about. The only agenda for a voter should be who are the 2 best teams,
right?
Period. It shouldn't be whether you want to see a rematch, whether a team's in the same conference, whether a team is a division or conference championship. If that's the case, then they need to build it into the criteria. But it needs to be all about who are the 2 best teams.
Well, let me present this to you then. What about records? If you're talking about the 2 best teams, what about where do records come into play? The reason I say that, what if Oklahoma State would have beaten Iowa State in that triple overtime, and you know, you still think, well, Alabama's probably the better team. Do you vote for a one-loss team over in Oklahoma State?
You can make that argument. Now, I will say this. Playing in a power conference like the Big 12, had Oklahoma State gone undefeated, I don't have a vote, but if I would have voted them at number 2. Even though so I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit. But all things being even, it has to come down to who do you think is the best team. And what's ironic about all of this is in 2008, SEC Commissioner Mike Sly proposed a +1, basically a 14 playoff system. Had that been in effect this year, we would have had Alabama versus Oklahoma State. We've had LSU versus Stanford, but one of the conferences opposing that was the Big 12. Now, the coaches poll final ballots were released to the public this week, and there's been a lot made about Saban voting Oklahoma State fourth. The coach wasn't the only one who did that. In fact, Air Force coach Troy Calhoun ranked Oklahoma State 5th. But here's the bottom line. ESPN's Brad Edwards says even if every voter that put the Cowboys 4th or lower instead ranked them 3rd, Alabama still would have finished 2nd in the BCS standings. So it's not like Saban's vote was a difference maker. Still, though, Rodney, a lot of people are making a big deal about Saban voting them 4th instead of number 3. But from what I understand, the previous week he had them at number 5, so he actually moved them up.
That's what I said. You know, where did he have them the week? How had he been voting? What was the history of his voting in terms of Oklahoma State? And he was consistent with it. He did move them up, but again, that's where how he had been voting them. And if you look at it, to be honest with you, Gary, had I had a vote, I wouldn't have voted Oklahoma State third. I would have probably voted Stanford third, because look who they lost to. They lost to an Oregon team that was a national title contender. Oregon was a team who their only losses were to #1 LSU and to a very, very good USC team. And again, I look at the loss that Oklahoma State had, and they lost to Iowa State.
Right.
You know, and again, you know, the way I see it is Oklahoma State knew what was riding, and they couldn't handle prosperity.
Right. Up 17 points in that game.
Up 17 points. They could not handle prosperity.
You know, here's my problem with the coaches poll. I think there should be a coaches poll. I think they should have an opportunity, but it should be for entertainment purposes only. I don't think it should count in the BCS, and I'll tell you why. Coaches are biased, period. And
well, so is the media.
Exactly, I mean, but more so your coaches.
Yeah.
You're always looking out for your program. And plus, they don't see the other teams play unless they're on their schedule and they're preparing for, you know how busy they are during the week.
Well, and you almost wonder, do these coaches actually fill out the ballots? How many of them do? How many of us is sports information directors?
Exactly. So I'm just saying, I do think the system needs to be tweaked, but the system, the way that it is now, the two best teams are in. Well, Mike Gundy didn't have a vote in the coaches poll, but he certainly did some campaigning, and a complete 180 from what he had said last week. Prior to their game against Oklahoma, he said that if he had a vote, he'd put Alabama at #2, but this is what he had to say following their win. I think people have to decide whether or not they want to see a 9-6 game or a 39-36 game. I think this is the opportunity for people to find out how good the defense is in the SEC. We'd like to have that challenge. I think our defense is better than what people say. Well, evidently you don't, because you just got through saying if you got to play in a game, it was going to be a 39-36 game. So how good could your defense be? You know, obviously he's politicking for his team. I've got no problem with that. But, you know, again, I think outside of Oklahoma and outside a few national media pundits, I think most people want to see Alabama and LSU again.
Well, I mean, I think that's, you know, when you look at the game that Alabama and LSU played and, you know, how close it was, the fact is it ended up a tie football game. It was a tied football game, 6-6, went into overtime. And again, I don't think anyone, I don't want to say anyone doubts, but there's certainly a majority of the people feel these are the two best teams, and they want to see that game again. Now, I know that there's a lot of people who are just fans that would have loved to have seen what would Oklahoma State do with their offense against maybe an Alabama or an LSU type defense. But again, I mean, you know, like I said, like you said, the two best teams are the two teams that deserve to be there. And these are the two best teams.
And they've got a championship to celebrate. Their first ever outright Big 12 championship. They're going to BCS Bowl. So it's still been a really good season for Oklahoma State. And, you know, I know some people that have coached out there, and I was told quite frankly, that their goal going into the season wasn't the national championship anyway.
Well, it shouldn't be. I mean, they've never come close to one.
So it's not like they haven't had a good year. Well, still to come on TITV, much more on the BCS title game. If Alabama wins, will it count the same as if LSU wins? Some say the Tigers have already won half of the national championship. We'll weigh in on that. Plus, we'll take your phone calls and get to your emails. There's the information on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. Stay tuned. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider Television, brought to you by Buffalo Rock. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Rodney will rejoin me shortly. Some recruiting news as Alabama continues to put together its class for 2012. The 21st commitment for the class of 2012 coming last night. 6'4", 245-pound tight end Kurt Freitag of Buford High School in Georgia will join his teammate Dylan Lee, previously a Bama commitment, in signing with the Crimson Tide in February. He chose Alabama over the Florida Gators. He is an outstanding prospect. Reminds some people of the tight end down at Auburn. Also, Alabama's current senior Brad Smellick. He can catch it. He can run with it after he catches it. And the class of 2013 continues to take shape. Alabama picked up a commitment last week from Artie Burns, 5'11", 184-pound cornerback out of Northwestern High School in Miami. His teammate Amari Cooper will be a wide receiver for the Tide, wide receiver signee for the Tide in 2012. Well, coming up, what are the chances that Alabama will have its second Heisman Trophy winner this weekend? We will examine that. Plus, we'll take your phone calls and get to your emails. The number to reach us, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. And coming up, what are the chances that the Tide, as I said, will have its second Heisman Trophy winner? We'll break that down next when we return. We found out today that Alabama junior offensive lineman Barrett Jones is the winner of the 2011 Wuerffel Trophy. The award, named after former Florida quarterback Danny Wuerffel, is presented each year to the football Bowl Subdivision player that best combines exemplary community service with academic and athletic achievement. Jones, who is now working towards a master's in accounting, has made mission trips to Haiti to help the people there struggling to come back from those earthquakes. He's also actively participated in tornado cleanup in West Alabama and worked with countless other community organizations in his time at UA. He is an absolutely fantastic young man and a great football player. Another great football player for the Crimson Tide and another outstanding young man is Trent Richardson. And he is a finalist for the Heisman Trophy going into this past weekend. A lot of people, most of the people had him as the favorite, but Robert Griffin had another huge game against Texas for Baylor. So now it looks like most of the polls have RG3, Robert Griffin III, ahead of both Andrew Luck and Trent Richardson's. Your thoughts?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Again, I know people are going to say, well, you're biased towards Alabama, and that's why you would say Richardson deserves it more than RG3. And hey, Griffin's a great player. There's no doubt about it. But again, Gary, I mean, look at the statistics from the Big 12. How many guys run up big numbers there? I know he's a great player. I know he's has that tremendous speed, and he's really fun to watch and all of those things. And I'm not saying he wouldn't be a great player in this conference. That's not what I'm saying. He's ran up a lot of
the numbers are inflated.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I mean, look when he went down a couple of weeks ago and they stuck in the backup, and he rang up some big numbers. And again, I don't want to diminish what Robert Griffin III has done, but Trent Richardson has done it against the best. There's no doubt about it. I just can't imagine that anyone who has had the opportunity to watch Trent Richardson in this state, in the media, would vote for anyone other than Trent Richardson. You've watched him for 3 years, and you see what he's done this year against the best that the college football world has to offer defensively. And I mean, I just, you know, but again, I think you're right. I think it does look like right now that Robert Griffin will win, and I'm not saying he's not deserving, because he is.
He's a great football player, but again, numbers are inflated. In that league, if you just look at numbers, somebody from one of these other conferences is going to win it every year because the defenses in this conference are better. That is just a fact. So you have to take that into account. But again, Trent will be there in New York City this weekend, and we'll see what happens for sure. But right now, most of the polls have him running 3 out of 5. Well, there's been some discussion as well that should Alabama win the BCS championship game and Nick Saban hoist a second Crystal Trophy at Alabama, that the Tide will, in essence, only have half a national championship. A lot of folks are saying the AP voters who aren't affiliated with the BCS, of course the BCS trophy automatically goes to the winner of the game, but a lot of these guys are out there saying, and ladies, that LSU should win the AP National Championship regardless of what happens in that game. It's not something that Nick Saban is agreeing with.
Back to 2003, but that's another story with another.
Did they ever, if the Super Bowl champ ever lost to someone else, lost to that team in the regular season and wins the Super Bowl and beats them in the Super Bowl, beats them in the playoff, I mean, that's what it is. It's a national championship game. You know, and LSU beat us, and they won the SEC championship, and now this is a completely different venue where, you know, people still think, and I think the voters and the system sort of prove that out, that these are the best two teams, and they're going to play again for the national championship. And I think whoever wins the game should be viewed as the national champion.
LSU may very well win the game. And if they do, it's a moot point. They're going to be the BCS champion, the AP champion, but I think the same thing should be said for Alabama. I agree with Nick Saban. This is a ridiculous notion that all of a sudden, because they have played before and LSU won the game, the national championship game shouldn't be about the national championship.
Well, exactly. I mean, you don't get rewarded as a champion unless you win the championship game. And again, we see it in all sports where there are rematches, and the team that lost the first game wins the second game, and that's the important game from the standpoint of it's the championship game, and they're crowned the champion, and nothing's ever said.
Rodney, one of these days they've got to get a playoff. And I know the bowls are involved, and it's going to be hard, but every other division does it. Every other sport does it. I mean, you just got to get a playoff so that everybody has their opportunity, and it will never completely be without controversy, but it'll be a better system than what's in place now. And a +1 would be better. Mike Slive tried to get that put through. Other conferences like the Big 12 did not want it. All right, Rod, let's take some phone calls. First up tonight in the city of Gadsden is Bill. Bill, welcome into the program.
Having a good night, you guys?
Doing well, Bill.
I wanted to ask something I've never heard talk about much. When Alabama's making their game films, do they use more than one camera? And do they also use the national televised version with all their different camera angles when they study their film?
Good question, Bill. And they may look at the television version. In fact, I'm sure they do. But for most of their preparation, yes, they've got cameras everywhere. They've got cameras everywhere from every angle, both end zones, up high, both sides, down low. They do the cut-ups and put it together. The position coaches look at, they got cameras specifically for their players, so they go through it like a fine-tooth comb. Now, I'm sure they probably do watch the actual telecast sometimes, but Rodney, for most of their preparation, they use their own tape because, as I said, they've got a full staff, a video team that's hired just to do exactly that.
That's what everyone does.
Yeah. So, again, they may watch the telecast, some, Bill, but for the most part, they use their own tape, and believe me, they break it down. Let's go to Joseph right here in Tuscaloosa. Joseph, what's up, buddy?
Hey, with Gary, Rodney, what's up? What's happening? Hey, I need to ask you a question. When Alabama played LSU on November the 5th, now, there was quite speculation going around that a lot of Alabama players were banged up and still taking LSU to overtime. How true could that be?
Well, Joseph, I think they were pretty healthy going into that game. But, Rodney, they did get beat up pretty good. Both teams. It was a physical game.
Yeah, it was. And I think, Joseph, that's one reason Alabama kind of struggled a little bit, in the following games, Mississippi State and then, of course, Georgia Southern a little bit. But because they were banged up. They were missing some guys. Obviously, Barrett Jones was out for a couple of games, and I do think that the opportunity for some of those guys to be held out allowed them to gain some of their health back, and, they performed better against Auburn with some of those guys back. Now, Gary, and I think that this opportunity to go 5 weeks without playing is really going to help. You got a guy like Eddie Lacy who's struggling with that turf toe, and playing every week. This gives him an opportunity to rest it up and get ready.
There's a lot of reasons to not like the long layoff between the last game and the national championship game. Injuries, though, are not one of those reasons. Both teams will be healthy and ready to go. All right, let's go to Bessemer and talk to John. John, what's up?
Gary.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, man, Alabama needs to win that game. I want to know, is Alabama going to win this game this time, or is it going to be a letdown?
Well, you know what, John? Rodney and I both thought Alabama was going to win the game the first time, and they had every opportunity to do so. I'm not ready to make a pick yet. I don't have to yet. I want to look at it closely. We will do it on Titv before the game, but it's a pretty even game. It was 9-6, 6-6 after regulation the first time. I think there'll be more points scored. But I think both these teams are great football teams, and I think it'll be another close game.
Well, I say like this, and again, it's early. We're not ready to make any predictions. But I think when you look at LSU, Gary, and watch them throughout the season, especially, I think they've grown a lot in terms of confidence since the Alabama game. And I think, to beat LSU, you've got to cut their heads off, kind of like, with Tebow with Florida. And I think it's going to take, certainly, Alabama's most complete effort. And I'm not talking 45 minutes. It's got to be 60 minutes to beat LSU.
A lot of different ways LSU can beat you.
Absolutely.
You look at that Georgia game, they didn't do anything offensively in the first half, and they were up by,
and you look at the second half, I don't think they really were that great offensively. You had the punt return towards the end of the first half. You had another punt return. Yet first possession of the second half, Aaron Murray fumbles, and guess who recovers? Number 7, the Honey Badger. I mean, the guy's all over the place. So, again, it's going to be we'll have to see how the game shakes out, but it is going to take Alabama's most complete effort.
And special teams, quite frankly, Alabama's going to have to be better in that game than they were against LSU the first time. We'll be back after this. We're back, and right back to the phones we go. CB is in Tuscaloosa. CB, how you doing there, my man?
Man, brother, how y'all doing?
All right.
We had some voting trouble back in the Bear Bryant days, but, this is 2011. Richardson's leading the Heisman a week ago. Looks like he's going in. Now he ain't even in the running, don't look like. And then the football team, Bama, we going to the national championship, no doubt, and we got a 0.9 or something. Sweat that out. Hello, what y'all think?
Well, we talked a little bit about the move to have LSU win half the national championship regardless, but I think in the end, common sense will prevail, just like in the BCS. Maybe Oklahoma State made it close, but the two best teams are there. I think if Alabama wins the game, obviously they're the BCS champion. I think they'll be the Associated Press champion.
Well, I do too. I don't think there'll be any dissent on that. I really don't.
All right, let's go over to center. Used to do some crappie fishing in center when I was a kid. Let's talk to Larry. What's up, Larry?
Not much. My question is the way Alabama kind of backed into the game, I don't feel comfortable with. And do you think that they can, the people above the
yeah, we may get a change. Hang on, Larry. I think Rodney wants to ask you
Larry,
a question.
let me ask you a question, just out of clarification. Now, tell me what your problem is with how they backed into the game.
Well, they was not voted in as far apart from Oklahoma State as what I thought they would be. And I think Oklahoma State, deserves a chance at
Well,
that
Larry,
game.
listen, I think we get your point. Rodney just wanted to clarify. I've already said on the record, I hope that the BCS gets tweaked or eventually we have a playoff. So I agree with you there. I don't agree at all that Alabama backed into anything. The system as it stands now, Alabama deserves to be there. So I totally disagree with you on that. Yeah, I do hope that the system changes in the future, and I've already said I'd like to have a playoff. 8 teams, 12 teams, with 4 teams having byes, or 16 teams, or whatever, or at least a +1. But right now, with the system that we have, Alabama deserves to be in the national championship game. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Does Stanford not deserve a chance? I mean, if we're just going to give chances, then, there's a lot of teams out there that might deserve a chance.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about chances. We're talking about it. Alabama earned it from the standpoint of they did everything they had to do. All the voting, all the polls said Alabama was number 2. So Alabama's a team that deserves that opportunity to play them again.
That's right, 1 and 2. That's how it works. We'll be back after this. All right, just about time to say good night. But first, I want to remind folks that we always head to dinner. We're done with the show, and Rodney and I and the rest of the crew will be up at the Pottery Grill in Northport. Come by and enjoy some great barbecue with us this evening if you'd like. If you want to see a replay of the show, you can catch it later on tonight on our website, WVUATV.com. We'll also have it again on WVUA at 10:35. So for Rodney Orr, John Huddleston, Jonathan Newman, and the rest of the crew here at Titv, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week. So long.